We're back here the whole 9 yards on a Sunday evening, 4:54 Eastern. Brandon, how's it going? How do you feel about your mock? I know one of your favorite players also got traded, so
Yeah. I guess mock, I guess we'll probably get more into it, obviously, but like we said when we made our last episode, we felt confident in our mocks, and we were texting during the draft, and it just got completely blown up, I would say. I think you were definitely more right than I was. You had a couple players who definitely jumped in that I didn't think was going to go in the lottery, and a couple guys that didn't go in the lottery that I thought would. So I think your mock was probably better than mine, but even still, I think guys going early, teams not taking guys that we thought they'd take, just some weird stuff. Only one trade, right? Was there even a trade in the top 14? I don't think
there
there was actually.
was
So
yeah, no, there
it was
wasn't.
just the Grizzlies, that trade already happened before. So there wasn't even a trade in the top 14, which we didn't really think there was going to be a lot, but we thought at least, there's always like one or two. So that
Yeah.
was definitely interesting. But yeah, I think you probably had a better mock than I
Yeah. I mean we both got one, two, and three correct with
did.
Cade, Green, and Mobley. Four was to me, I think that was the biggest surprise of the lottery for me. I think some people weren't as surprised by it, but I don't know. I mean, like I thought Suggs was going to Toronto for the past 5 months at this point. So that
Yeah.
was surprising to me. It gives me more faith in Scotty Barnes, though. I mean, I was down on Scotty Barnes because he was probably going to the Magic to me, and now he's going to Toronto, and I have much more faith in a team like Toronto than I do the Magic. So that got flip flopped. I had Book Knight at 6. Book Knight fell to 11.
Yeah.
Um, I like that pick by the Hornets. I mean, I did do the Washington Wizards trade. If you remember that trade, I did mock that, which obviously didn't
Yeah.
end up happening, but I guess I still technically got Kuminga and Moody in their spots correctly. I still had them going 7 and 14, just not to the right team, I guess. But I like those picks by the Warriors. Considering there wasn't any trades, to me, that was my ideal draft for the Warriors. Um, Wagner, I had at 10 to the Magic. He went at 8 to the Magic.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know if you count that right or wrong. And I had Kai Jones to the Hornets at 11. They got him at 19. Um, or was it 19?
They got Kai Jones at 19.
Okay, yeah. Gruba fell way further than I thought he was going to. Mitchell went at 9 to the Kings. But yeah, I mean, I actually I feel like I had a decent mock overall.
Yeah, and you had Zaire. I think that was your first one that you had Zaire going in the top 14, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So that was someone I thought would go probably late teens, early 20s. He went 10, which I think it was definitely surprising. I mean, you were probably even surprised by it also, just because I think it probably changed when Giddy went 6, because we all thought Giddy was going to go 10 to the Grizzlies. So when he went 6, that probably changed some strategy for them. It'll be interesting to if we ever find that out or not. But uh, yeah, I think Giddy going 6 obviously was surprising. I think there was some thought that it could happen, but maybe not at 6. Maybe I don't know who they trade back with, but maybe a couple spots and they could still get him. But that was definitely surprising when they took him at 6. I thought Book Knight was for sure going there, especially when we knew the top 5. Even though Barnes and Suggs flipped, we still knew that was going to be the top 5. So I thought Book Knight was or Kaminga, but honestly, Book Knight was going to go 6. Yeah, like you said, Wagner. I think we all thought he was going to go to the Magic there at 8, or in your trade 10, whatever. I think we all kind of knew he was going to the Magic. The Warriors surprised me with Kaminga. I thought that when the Thunder took Giddy, I thought for sure they were going to take Book Knight, and that was my pick in our final mock draft. I said they can get Book Knight at 7 and then Duarte at 14, which they missed out on him by one pick. But I think Moses Moody was a really good pick there at 14 because he kind of fell a little bit. So I think they kind of saved that there. But them not taking Book Knight, I think it's surprising because Kaminga is obviously a developed guy, and you're looking for a win now. You're on a win now team. So unless he steps up big time in training camp, and it does help though, full training camp, which unlike last year, but I think that was a surprising pick. It seemed like a future pick and not a present pick, which it seemed like they were going to go with. I thought Book Knight just fit that perfectly. So that was definitely surprising. Like I said, Davion to the Kings at 9. I had that in my first mock draft. But I did not think that was going to hold up, especially the way the draft was going. Alfred Şengün was right there. He actually fell a little bit more than I thought. He went 16 to the Rockets. It was a Thunder pick, but they traded up for that. So Davion going to the Kings, I guess, how do you really, I guess, did you have any thought about that, him going 9? When, obviously Şengün's on the board, even Bouknight was on the board. There were some other guys that were on the board there that I thought they probably could have got.
Yeah, I wasn't a fan of the Davion pick. He might be a good player, and I think he probably will be a solid defensive guard, but I like Bouknight's high upside more. I think he's a better scorer as well, better outside shooter. I thought Şengün would have been a better pick as well. Just higher ceiling guys that have more time to develop in Sacramento. Mitchell is a guy that essentially has to be good right away. Um, so it is kind of scary. And what's his ceiling? How long will he be good for? Does it fit this team's timeline? Not really. I mean, I guess it fits like De'Aaron Fox's timeline like a little bit, but even then, like not really. You don't want to be
Yeah.
paying De'Aaron Fox and Davion Mitchell at the same time. So I just I don't know. I'm not big on the pick.
Yeah, definitely a lot of people, at least I saw on Twitter, that just, it was, they just didn't really like that pick. And I think for the same things you're saying, and that he's definitely a guy that would be better on a win now team just because he's older, the defense that he already brings, and the shooting that you would think would continue. So that was, again, another surprising pick there, especially with other guys on the board that you thought would fit that team for the future. I think 12 Spurs, Joshua Primo. I think he's the youngest player in the draft. I think he's like 18. He's not even 19 years old yet, but he's like a young 18. Him going 12, I thought he would be later in the first round, so they kind of took him higher than probably people thought. Again, I thought that could have been a spot for someone else there. Again, Şengün was still on the board there. I thought that was a good fit for them there. Even Usman, who even fell even further, he went 23, which is very surprising. I thought he possibly could have went there also. So a lot of guys fell. Some guys rose that we probably didn't really think of, or at least didn't think was going to rise that high. But definitely a weird draft, definitely a good draft for sure. But just some picks that didn't exactly, at least in my mind, make sense for the teams that took those guys. At least for a couple of teams. Other teams I think nailed it, and we'll get into those winners and losers of the draft. But just definitely some weird picks in this draft.
Yeah, I mean, my first winner would probably, and I guess it's not in a particular order, but the first winner off the top of my mind would be Charlotte. I mean, you got Putin at
For
11. He
sure.
fell to you. To me, he was probably a top 8 talent. You get Kai Jones, who to me seemed to be like their guy. And it wouldn't have shocked me if they drafted him at 11. And they get him at 19. I don't like love or hate Jones. I think he's all right. I think he'll be solid. But to get your guy at 19 while also getting, Book Night at 11 is huge. And then you get a high ceiling guy and JT Thor at pick 37. At that point, why not? To me, they're a huge winner. And I think that's a solid draft to start building around LaMelo with. I mean, LaMelo's just, this team's going to be so fun to watch. I mean, LaMelo, Book Night, Kai Jones, Gordon Hayward, Terry Rozier. It's going to be an exciting team. They have a lot of pieces. It's just, I mean, I think they could be a playoff team this year. We'll see how the East shakes out, but
I think, yeah, I think that he fits that team really well. And they were big. I mean, they probably should have been a playoff team last year, and they had that 8 seed, basically at the complete end of the season. And they kind of blew up towards the end. So getting a guy like Bouknight who can easily go in there, whether he's starting or off the bench, he's going to give you points, which is exactly what you want. And I think he fits really well with LaMelo. I think Kai Jones, who in my first mock had the Hornets taking him also. I think he's a really good fit there. I think he's going to be a good backup big for them. And you would obviously like him to be a starter on that team. They don't have a lot of bigs there. We'll see what they do in free agency. But I for sure think that they were a winner. Having Bouknight fall into them at 11, not even have to trade up or anything to get him, that was huge, obviously. I think another winner for me, and it's mostly for him falling down that one spot, would just be the Magic. I think that them getting Suggs and not getting Barnes, even though I really like Barnes, I think Suggs has that superstar potential. I think Barnes has that. I don't think Barnes is ever going to be a superstar. He's going to be a really good player, but he's never going to have that superstar X factor ability that Suggs has the potential to have. So for the Magic to get him, and I know he's a guard and they have, Anthony and Fultz, it doesn't matter at that point. You're obviously going to take him there at 5 when he falls down. So for them to get him, and then you get Wagner again, it's a really good piece. A lot of people are really see the upside in him and project him to be a pretty good starter or a six man, whatever he's going to be, a pretty good player on a team in the future. I think they nailed the draft, honestly. And again, it helps that the Raptors took Barnes instead of Suggs. So again, that was the guarantee, basically, like you said, the last 5 months, ever since the college season ended, that he was going to be that fourth player taken, and that whoever that fourth team was, it turned out to be Toronto, was going to take him, and they just didn't. So I think the Magic definitely were a winner and getting a guy who has real superstar ability.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree. I don't know that they necessarily played the draft insanely well. I mean, they had a good draft, obviously. I mean,
Yeah.
I think when the guys fall to you, they fall to you. A team that I thought played the draft really well, and I'll give another winner here, would be the Houston Rockets. I would have gone Mobley over Green, so that's my one criticism. But if Green's your guy, then Green's your guy. I'm not going to hate on it necessarily. But getting Şengün at 16 to me is some really nice value. He rose pretty high on boards late in the draft process. He ended up falling back a little bit. You get him at 16, you make an aggressive move to go grab Şengün. I think that's a good pick. And not having Mobley, we can see how a Christian Wood Şengün backcourt might work out potentially. I don't know if I necessarily love the fit, but I don't hate it by any means. And I think getting Garuba at 23 is another very, very good pick as well. I mean, Gruba is a guy that I had going 12th to the Spurs. And I don't think he has superstar potential, but when you have 4 first round picks, you don't need every guy to be a superstar. Gruba should be able to be a solid guy in the rotation for years to come. He may not be the offensive guy that you want, but defensively, he should be able to be pretty good, and he should be able to rebound the ball. And I think he should be a guy that adds to the rotation and is cheap and for the next 4 years, whatever. And then Josh Christopher at 24. I don't know that he's a high ceiling guy. He had a bad season at Arizona State, but I mean, he's a shot maker, and if he can play defense, then he's another guy that adds to that rotation, and that's a lot of pieces to start the rebuild off. And it does make you think, what if they had actually gotten more for like Harden, and if they had actually handled their team to me in a better way, I think this team would be like one of those teams, like similar to the Hornets or similar to the OKC Thunder, where it's like, yeah, they're not great right now, but like it's undisputable that their future is so bright that like it's hard not to want to watch this team, even though they might not be a top 15 team in the league.
Yeah. I think that they had a really good draft as well. The one thing I'll say is, I mean, we'll see how it really matters, but to get Şengün at 16, they did give up 2 first round picks. That's a team that doesn't have a lot of first round picks, as we've obviously talked about for the future. So we'll see. I mean, again, if it works out, it works out. You don't care what you gave up. But you're right. If they were to get more in a Harden return or, the Westbrook return, you can only get as much as you could get, obviously. But they did get a first round pick out of that, which they did give up in this trade. So I guess you kind of, technically traded like Westbrook to get him. But I don't know, 2 first round picks, maybe a little much to move up, but they got their guy. And again, if it works out, it works out. So you can't complain. But I think another possible winner for me, and again, I'm kind of putting possible based on, I think the guy's a lot of talent, and I think he fits a role on this team that they're going to lose someone. But we'll see how good he's actually going to be. Again, a lot of questions about his character. That's why he left Duke. And I'm talking about Jalen Johnson and the Hawks. The Hawks got him at 20, which I thought was pretty good, a pretty good spot to get him there at 20. And again, he fits a role on that team where John Collins, he's kind of like John Collins. He's very similar to him. So it seems like Collins is probably out the door, whether he just leaves or they sign and trade him, whatever it is. Obviously, you'd like a sign and trade. You get some, prospects or some draft capital or even another player back, obviously. So it seems like he's probably going to, I don't know if he's going to be in the starting lineup. I probably doubt that, but possibly, but he's at least going to be off that bench. I think he fits, the spot that Collins is going to leave. Again, like I said, they're pretty similar players. They also got Sharif Cooper in the second round, which, it's a second round guy, but Sharif Cooper coming out of high school is one of the top rated prospects. Went to Auburn, had some like problems. I think it was, I don't know if it was just like eligibility wise or exactly what it was, injury, I forget. But when he was playing, I think like he played like half the amount of games as everyone else last year in college basketball, but he had the most free throw attempts. So whether that's him knowing the rules, manipulating them, kind of like Harden and Trae Young, which is going to go away. That is a new rule that's going to happen. They're going to take away those kind of fouls, but he clearly knows how to get to the line. He knows how to score. So if he can just be off your bench, which obviously he's going to be, and be somewhat impactful, again, you're not expecting him to even probably get 20 minutes, probably get less than that. But if he can just be a scoring option off the bench for a team that has a ton of scoring options, I think that's a great pick in the second round. And again, it's a guy coming out of high school who had a ton of upside, and even in college showed that. So to get him in the second round, I thought was a pretty good pick. And like I said, if Jalen Johnson can work out and kind of be your John Collins for obviously a lot cheaper, I think that's a really good value for your cap. Also, you're going to have to sign Young. You have Capella under contract. You'll see Hunter and Reddish. They may try and trade Reddish because of all the money that they're going to have to take on, which kind of sucks. But I think Reddish is a really good player for them. But I thought they had a pretty good draft for guys who kind of fell to them and they didn't have to move it all. So I just thought they had a pretty good draft.
Yeah, I would agree. I've heard that actually they might end up re-signing Collins, which I mean, I don't know what you would think about that. We'll see what Jalen Johnson turns into. I like the Johnson pick. Um, but I mean, we'll see how it works out. Cooper, yeah, I honestly don't know how to feel because like, yeah, he was a guy that I liked. But to fall to what was it, like pick 48?
Yeah, 48.
You There has to be something. I mean, I don't know exactly what it would be, but there has to be something. There has to be a reason why he would fall to 48. And there's a chance if he doesn't get taken to 48, he might go completely undrafted, which would be insane, but which would have been insane. But yeah.
I guess a loser. Do you have a loser in mind?
Yeah, I mean, I have losers in mind. I guess the first one, and I guess the first one, honestly, I'll go with the Pacers. I didn't like the Duarte pick at 13. It feels like you're trying to compete now pick, and I don't like that. I want to blow things up if I'm the Pacers, and I don't. I know Carlisle's a top 10 head coach at the very least, probably. And I know Sabonis, Turner, Bra. I know these guys are all great. And if you play to your ceiling, you're probably a top 4 seed in the East, just because I think the pieces can work very well together with a good head coach and a good system. But you're not beating a Brooklyn. You're not beating even in a year like this year slash last year with the Suns and Bucks finals. Like, even if you had so many injuries around you, this team still healthy would not be winning the finals. So it's just like I don't get it. The Isaiah Jackson pick, I'm happier with, but to me at 13, I feel like you had so many better options, or maybe you try to package 13 and 22 and maybe move up and try to get somebody, but I just don't like the direction of the Pacers. And I guess it's also more of an offseason thing too. Like, you better make some moves. I mean, I don't want to see this team return in the regular season with, Brogdon, Miles Turner. It's just like, to me, I don't think that works.
Yeah, and I think the only way it is going to work is if they do trade a TJ Warren and a Miles Turner, which there's been conversations about that happening. So I would be surprised if that doesn't happen, because you bring in Carlisle, who's obviously not looking for a rebuild. He's obviously going there for a reason, that's to compete. Whether you think it's a championship or not, at least a deep playoff run is your probably best hope for that team right now. But I think getting Duarte, I think the reason that they get him, I like that Isaiah Jackson pick. They traded that with the Wizards to get him, but I think that I think they have to make moves this offseason for that pick to make sense there, because you're right. They could have even traded down. They could have possibly traded up to get someone if they really wanted to really badly. Or you just take someone else that's a little bit more, has higher upside and a little more, development there, because obviously Duarte is, what is he, 24, I think he is. So obviously that's a guy that is, really experienced, and he's going to play right away. He's not 18, 19 years old, where you have a couple years to mold him. You basically have to get him right away. So I would assume they would make moves. I'd be surprised, really surprised if they didn't. But I do agree with you. If they don't do anything and they kind of keep this team together, then yeah, I just don't think it was a great pick, because I think you easily could have went with someone else that could help your team for the future. But I think a loser for me, and I did talk about it earlier, but I don't even know how much of a loser it is. But I think the Spurs. I see what you're trying to do with the Primo pick, but I feel like you could have got him probably a little bit later. You possibly could have traded down. Again, the trade may have not been there, so there's always that. But um, I just didn't really like that pick. I thought that there's a couple other guys they probably could have went with. There at 12 if they were going to stay there. That could help their team. Later. And again, Primo's a young guy, so we have to see. And he did have a lot of upside there. I think he went to Alabama, right? So um, he definitely has upside, but I don't know. I just think that there was other guys they could have taken. Again, Garuba, who I thought would have been a good fit there. He went 23, so that just shows that you possibly could have traded back a lot more, got a lot more assets for your team for the future. And then you could have got a guy like him later on. Again, Şengün went 16. You still could have traded back and got him. So I think there was other guys they could have taken if they traded back a little bit. Again, you don't know how the draft exactly is going to lay out, but the way it was going, it seemed like those guys were dropping. So you definitely could have traded back and got some more assets. Again, DeRozan's most likely going to leave, whether it's obviously I think he's a free agent, right? So you didn't get anything for him. Aldridge, you didn't really get anything for him either when he left. So your veteran pieces, again, Patty Mills, I think he's a free agent also. So you're going to lose a lot of guys and not get a lot. You're not going to get anything for them. So I just thought that they could have helped their future out more in this draft, and I don't exactly think they did that.
Yeah. And if you told me to pick one, just I had to pick one team that I thought had the worst draft. And it is tough for me to say this team had the worst draft. I am honestly going to go with the Raptors. I don't like the Barnes pick at 4. I think you had Suggs there waiting for you. It was a storyline for the past 5 months. I thought he would have been a great fit in Toronto, and I'm probably a Suggs guy, so I think he has I think he has a chance to be better than one of the top 3 guys. And I think on average, if we had, 100 drafts that were similar to this draft, where you had guys like Cade, Green, and Mobley and Suggs all in the top 4, and those guys got drafted top 4, I think on average, Suggs would be not the worst, just because I think he doesn't have the lowest floor. And I thought it was a relatively safe pick. I thought it was a pretty high ceiling pick for his floor as well. I thought it was a position of need. I thought he would have been a culture changer. I don't think Scotty Barnes is a culture changer. I think he's more of a insanely good role player who could be a third best player on a championship team. But I think Suggs is a guy who could be the best or the second best player on a championship team with, the right team around him. So I don't like the pick is what I'm saying.
Yeah, and another team I was in that top teams are taking guys. Just quickly, I think the Cavs just not trading that pick, I think was a win because there's obviously conversations of them trading that pick. I think it was obviously the right move that they didn't, because Mobley, like I said in the last episode, I think he will be the best player out of this draft when it's all said and done. So for them to get him, not to give in to someone giving a ton of first round picks, a young player that you would want. Like the Thunder possibly trading up or the Magic trading up or something. So I think I give him credit for not trading back, not doing the wrong move, and I'm doing the right move. And I'm taking Mobley at 3, who we all thought was going to be there because we knew Cade was going 1 and Jalen was going 2. So I just want to give credit to them because it would have been a very Cavs move for them to trade back and then lose out on a guy who I think is going to be like a top 10 player in this league. So like I said, I think that was, a mini win just for them not trading back.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. I think Mobley, yeah, I would not have liked them trading out of that pick. I don't know if you would count this into their draft grade necessarily, but like this is stuff I would have expected to happen on or near draft night, which is figuring out your roster. Really, I mean, Mobley's a great guy, but how's he gonna operate with Allen? How's Sexland gonna be? To me, it's unacceptable if the Cavs return to the regular season and have Colin Sexton and Darius Garland as your 1 and 2. I'd like to see something different. It's not going to be, you're not going to have a super high potential guy there next to Darius Garland, which you might have been able to have had you taken maybe like a Green or whatever. But I don't want to see that. I think we know what Sexton is, or at least we know what he is on the Cavs. I'd give him a fresh start, whether it's, a sign and trade or whatever, or he just leaves or, whatever. I would prefer to see something new there. So if they do return with Sexton and Garland, I mean, I don't know if you'd factor that into the grade, but I would consider that a lose because frankly, I think Mobley was there for the taking, and I don't know that I'm gonna like. I wouldn't grade their draft an A plus because they took Mobley at 3. I would give them like a B because I think a B is like you did what you were supposed to. Like Cade, I would get like the Detroit Pistons. I would give a B because I think you did what you're supposed to. Like I'm not gonna. I don't. I mean, it's difficult because yeah, that was an A plus pick, but like, I mean, did you do anything out of the ordinary to like set you apart? To me, no. But
Yeah, I think if you're not factoring the player's talent, I think that makes sense. Like obviously the first 3 picks, that's you're supposed to take those 3 guys. So like, yeah, that is a B because you did what you were supposed to do. But when you factor in the talent, I guess that's how you get like the A's and the A pluses. But I do agree that if Sexton's on that team starting this season, then something's wrong because he shouldn't be on that team. He should be traded. He just doesn't fit with them, and you're not going to want to pay him big money anyways. So you might as well just trade him. But I think the Allen Mobley thing will work out. Allen is a restricted free agent. I'd be shocked if they don't sign him back from whatever team, whether they just sign him back or another team has an offer, then they match that offer sheet. But I think they'll work out at least for the short term. Again, we'll see what happens. Maybe Mobley is like the true 5 on that team, and you kind of need to trade Allen out of there. But I think for the first year, possibly 2 years, I think it'll work out. But I do agree that Sexton definitely needs to be gone from that team. But if that's it from the draft, then there was a huge trade that happened. I mean, are you good with the draft?
yeah, let's get into the Westbrook
Yeah.
trade.
So the trade that came down hours before, at least the report came down hours before the draft happened, that was made official. I think like at pick 7 or pick 8 of the draft was the Russell Westbrook trade. So it was the Lakers and the Wizards, and the full details of the trade is the Lakers sending Kuzma, Montrezl Harrell, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, and the 22nd overall pick, which turned out to be Isaiah Jackson, but the Wizards traded that for Isaiah Todd. And then the Lakers got a 2024 second round pick and a 2028 second round pick also, and obviously Westbrook. So I'll start with you, or do you want me to start? Because I don't know. It is. You're right. I mean, it is my favorite player. So, do you want me to
I
start?
guess I guess I'll start and I'll give you the floor for I'll give you the spotlight for whatever. I guess I'll just go first is what I'm saying. For the Wizards, it's simple to me. If that's the best you were getting, I think that's the best you got, and you just take it. I don't think you come back next year with Russell Westbrook. It's just we know the state of the Wizards are not competing. I'm not going to talk about it anymore. So yeah, I mean, they're not. It's not a perfect trade for the Wizards, but it's better than nothing. And if that's the best you get, whatever. The Lakers, I think I'm higher on it than most people. I think most people are like, yeah, Westbrook's a great player, but I question the fit, and they would have preferred to have Buddy Hield for a similar package. Yeah, I think Buddy Hield's a more conventional fit. I think he probably would be a better fit, but I fit only goes so far because I just in general think Westbrook's a better player than Hield, and I don't think it's particularly close. I mean, Hield's a guy that at his ceiling is, I guess, your fifth, maybe hopefully not your top 4 best players, and he's kind of your 5th or 6th, and he's maybe just an elite 6th man, or he's like a solid starter that can play really good crunch time minutes. But I mean, Westbrook gives you your big 3. If you're going to beat the Nets, to me, it's Hield's not going to do it. I don't think. I think you would need Westbrook, and you need to find a way for it to work. Obviously, the chances aren't necessarily as high working with Westbrook than it is working with Hield, because Hield's just an easier to work with player in general. But again, what's your ceiling with Hield versus what's your ceiling with Westbrook? I think your ceiling with Westbrook is so much higher, and I think people kind of just forget that. We'll see if it works out. I'm not too sure. I still think, I mean, last year I liked the Lakers more than I liked the Nets, but I feel like I've come around, and I feel like I probably like the Nets more than I do the Lakers right now. The faith in their injury history plus the fit is it's still a doubt. So, but yeah, I mean, I like the Westbrook trade more than I like the Heel trade. And I think you would probably agree with that.
Yeah, and the argument between that is, would you rather have the better fit or the better player? And some people would say fit, but I think with this particular team, I think it's about the better player, because I think this trade is all about the regular season, which may sound crazy, but for some people, but I think it is. It's because LeBron's 36, going to be 37, right? So he's obviously he's going to be towards the end of his career. Obviously, all those minutes he's basically played another 3 seasons with all the playoff minutes that he's played. So you need to rest him as much as you can. Just take his time, have him not play as many minutes in the regular season, save him for the playoffs. AD with all of his injury history, you can't play him that much in the regular season because he's just going to get injured again like he did last season. So getting Westbrook, who's been pretty healthy. I mean, you really can't say he hasn't been healthy. I mean, the only times he's gotten injured was last year in the playoffs when he tore his hamstring, and then the beginning of last season where he tore his other hamstring, or his quad, I should say. But um, other than that, he's basically played almost every single game the last 6 seasons. So he's been pretty healthy. The regular season, he's always going to go 100% all the time, no matter what. So you can always count on that. I think for the regular season, they were talking about LeBron going to the 4 and AD going to the 5, which creates more spacing for your team. So you have 2 shooters on the court with Westbrook, LeBron, and AD on the court, where obviously none of those guys are great shooters. LeBron's probably the best shooter out of those 3, but you could have whatever guys they signed in free agency. I've seen, Iguodala, Rudy Gay, DeMar DeRozan. He's not a shooter, but he's another, scorer. Melo, who shot 40% from 3 last season. Wayne Ellington, Avery Bradley. There's a ton of guys who want to play for them, obviously. So they're going to get a lot of 3-point shooters to put on the court. Ben McLemore was on their team last year, another really good 3-point shooter. So they're just going to spread the floor, have a lot of shooters, and have Westbrook not dominate the ball in the regular season, but I think he'll have the ball more than people think. When it comes down to the last 4 minutes, 2 minutes, obviously LeBron's going to have the ball. But I think it's kind of going to be Westbrook's team to handle the ball and make decisions for the regular season. Now, when it comes to the playoffs, LeBron's going to be the point guard, obviously. There's no doubt about that. So we'll see what happens when we get to the playoffs, whether Westbrook I read the LA Times article about this trade going down, and Westbrook said he'll play off the ball like he did in Houston, which he did play off the ball in Houston, but he did average 27 points, and that kind of happened when he started taking the ball over more. If you remember that season from 2 years ago where Harden wasn't playing great and he was kind of injured, so Westbrook kind of had the ball and they shaped the team around him and they started playing better. So I don't know how much of that was exactly true about him playing off the ball more, but we'll see. With a guy like LeBron, he's going to have the ball, so I think that may help. But I think it's a plus for the Lakers because I don't think they were going to get Chris Paul. I truly think he's going to re-sign with the Suns. I'd be super surprised if he's not. And even if he didn't, I don't know if the Lakers could get him, to be honest. So I don't think that was a real possibility. I think the Buddy Hield, again, if it was a different team, a different set of players, I think it would be maybe a better trade, possibly a better trade. But you're right. If you're going to face the Nets in the finals, is Buddy Hield, AD, and LeBron going to beat them, or is Westbrook and LeBron and AD? Who has the better chance? I think it's clearly the latter and not the first one. So I think they had to make this trade. Again, LeBron's only going to be playing like this for at least this season and maybe next season. So you have to do something if you want another championship. You can't get Buddy Hield and expect to win 1 to 2 more championships with LeBron being this old. So I think it's something they had to do. They didn't give up that much. Again, Kuzma, Harrell was a nothing for that team anyways. I think Pope was a pretty important player. He was really good defensively and was a lot better at shooting the 3. But the funny thing about, those 3 guys that they're all clutch clients. So, I think that, and Harrell had to opt into his contract for this trade to work. So I think that Rich Paul and LeBron kind of told him, you better opt in because we want the trade to happen. So I saw that on Twitter also. But again, yeah, I think it's a plus for the Lakers. I think that for the regular season, it's going to work. They're going to be a top seed. I think no doubt. LeBron's going to rest. AD's going to rest. Westbrook's going to take the team over a lot. He's going to put up crazy stats with this team, which I think is a positive for sure. But when he gets to the playoffs, that'll be the real question. But again, that's not for another, 10 months, 9 months. So we'll see what happens then. But for the regular season, I think it's a win.
I would agree on regular season. I think half the games about you should give LeBron and AD some rest and not throw them in for, their 100% 35 minutes type of thing where they were kind of doing last year. Back to back shouldn't have to be a thing for them either. Westbrook should be able to take the load and kind of be similar to what, he's been used to in the OKC days and some of the Rockets days and some of the Wizards days. But I still think for at least, some of the regular season, they need to be playing what they would be playing in the playoffs. So, we can talk about that, whether that's Westbrook on ball or whether that's LeBron on ball. I would assume it would probably be Westbrook point guard. You throw AD at the center, LeBron at the power forward, and you have your combination of, maybe a Avery Bradley and Carmelo Anthony at the 2 and 3. Whatever two minimum guys you're able to sign, that's probably your best five. It is scary because even if you do get Westbrook, AD and LeBron to work out, pretty much the guys where you're going to sign, which is, the Avery Bradleys, Carmelos, Wayne Ellingtons, like, to me, they, in theory, they should be good, but these are guys that end up being like 50-50s. It's like 50% chance they work out and they are okay and they can shoot, 38% from three and play all right defense and be a good role player. But there's also a 50% chance that, I mean, they're okay. They're like league average from three, and defensively, they're probably subpar and it doesn't work out. And there's a chance that if you don't get those guys working out for you, then, even if you get your big three to work out, you have nothing around you. So it's a gamble. Losing Kuzma, Harrell. I mean, Harrell's, yeah, I'd agree. Harrell's a nothing. Pope's good. Kuzma, I mean, he's more than nothing,
Yeah.
but not much more, I guess. But still, it still hurts when you have pretty much nothing on your team right now. So your 50-50 guys, minimum contract, veterans, got to work out. You need to figure out your big three. To me, the answer is probably Westbrook at the 1, LeBron at the 4, and AD at the 5. But I'd like to give that, a bunch of offseason practice and give it 20 games in the regular season, see how that feels. Mid-season, kind of start to feel it out because, out of the first 35 games, probably 20 of them, you'll be able to have LeBron, AD, and Westbrook at full strength, kind of, testing stuff out. And the other 15, it's LeBron and AD playing more casually and Westbrook kind of being ball dominant just to get through the regular season. So, and then after that first 35 games, we'll see how is it going. And if you need to change, then I think the answer would probably be LeBron playing on the ball much more. And you kind of have to teach Westbrook to just be able to move off the ball. He's never going to be a good shooter. You just gonna have to accept that, but still he's going to have to, if it doesn't work him on the ball, he's going to have to start playing off the ball. And then I'd assume you might even put AD at the 4 because that's what he prefers to play. If you're not going to have LeBron at the 4, you might have to put AD at the 4, which means Marc Gasol might have to play. And you're going to need games to figure this out, but you also need to give games for them to rest. So it's a lot. They're going to need to kind of use all 82 games. So that is difficult, but if it works out, again, I mean, that's your best chance to beat the Nets. So
Yeah. And, Westbrook's never played with as gifted as a passer as LeBron is. So I think working off the ball shouldn't be too hard if he's just willing to cut, because if he's willing to cut, then LeBron's going to find them. LeBron's one of the best passers of all time. So with LeBron with the ball and Westbrook, whether it's screens off the ball, moving without the ball, just motion, I think LeBron's going to find him. Then he could find Anthony Davis. They could find shooters on the outside. So I think once that chemistry comes along, and I agree, like this 82 game season is basically just a trial run for the playoffs, to see what works, what doesn't work, what lineups work, who works with when who's on the ball. I think that's just what this 82 game season is going to be. Because again, they're obviously going to be a top team in the West, and assuming injuries aren't going to happen. Even if they do and they just make the playoffs, I mean, they're going to be one of the favorites anyways. So I just think the 82 game season is a lot of trial and error, and we'll see what works or what doesn't work. But in the end, I do think it's going to work. But when the playoffs happen, we'll see. Again, Westbrook in the playoffs hasn't been great. I kind of say some of that is a little out of proportion, but I think with LeBron, I think he'll be kept in check with him. So, and again, if Davis can play like he did in 2020 in the playoffs, then there's no reason that this team shouldn't be meeting the Nets. Again, no injuries in the finals for 2021 or 2022, whatever year it is.
yeah, no, I 100% agree. I think in general, we're both higher on the Westbrook. Honestly, I could say much higher on the Westbrook trade than a lot of other people.
Yeah.
The national guys and a lot, even the local guys. I mean, I think most of them are, it's okay. I mean, it's better than nothing, I guess, but a lot of people would have preferred the Hield trade. I just don't agree, but we can move on. I mean, we can talk quick on free agency and then kind of wrap things up unless you have anything to bring up about Westbrook. But I mean, it's a limited free agency class this year. You have some guys like a Collins, but Collins looks like he might go back to Atlanta. He's restricted, but I think the biggest free agent this year is probably Kyle Lowry. It's him and DeRozan. It's the former Toronto dynamic duo that could never get past LeBron. Kyle Lowry, it's going to be interesting to see where he goes, because how much money does he go for? To me, I've heard 30 mil a year for 3 years is kind of what it would take to secure a guy like Lowry. So that puts a lot of teams out of contention. The Heat of a team that have been rumored. There have been other teams that have been rumored. It's like, especially with acquiring Westbrook now, obviously Kyle Lowry's not going to go to the Lakers. I know there are people that were hoping that maybe he goes on a super cheap deal before the Westbrook trade, but that's not going to happen. I I thought there were going to be more teams that were like better fits for Lowry, but to me, it's like the Heat, maybe the Knicks. Um, I mean, other than that, I don't know who else is dying to sign Lowry to a 3-year, $90 million offer. He might get less than I expect. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at his age. I mean, he's 35 right now. He just came off that $30 million contract that it was kind of like a 1 to 2 year with the Raptors, possibly the Sixers. Again, that's always been a rumor, but it seems like the Heat. There was a report earlier today. Dragic, I think the Heat accepted, or they, whatever, accepted his club option for, I think it was 19 million. So that could possibly be used for a sign and trade with Lowry. I know Lowry's a free agent, but again, you could work that out, or they just sign him straight up, whatever it is. So we'll see what happens. It seems like I think he's going to leave. I do. I don't think he's going to go back to Toronto. So I think he goes to the Heat. Unless the Sixers jump in and make a crazy offer, the Knicks do, but I think it will be the Heat, which I think makes sense. I think that's a good team for him to go to if they could bounce back. Obviously, you have Butler, who we thought was a top 10 player, for sure top 20, but he was on that fringe of top 10 after last season. Bam was one of the better. He's an All NBA type guy. Then Larry, he's obviously a proven winner and everything. Even though I don't really love him, I do respect him and I do understand that he makes teams better. So I think it definitely helps that team in an East where you got to load up because those top teams are going to be really hard to beat. So for the Heat to kind of get back to where they were last season, I think that they do probably have to make this move. I think another guy is Mike Conley. I'd be interested to see what team wants him. He came off that huge contract. There's no way he gets that big of a contract again. But I don't even know what he would get. Like, what would he get? It's obviously gonna be a small contract, but how much money is that going to be? Is that going to be 20 million? He just came off 30 million, so it's going to be like a 2-year 20 million or 2-year 25. I don't know what it's going to be, but I want to see what team, if he wants to win a championship, I think he may even re-sign. We'll see what that jazz situation is like. They have a lot of money there already tied up. So if he wants to go to a winning team, he probably has to take a smaller contract, but I just don't know what team that'd be. I don't know what team he fits with, at least right now. Again, free agency starts tomorrow, so we'll see what the conversations are. But I guess, what team do you think could use Conley, or what team do you think Conley has the best chance to at least have a championship aspiration with?
My guess would be Conley returns to to the Jazz. There have been rumors that he's probably going to go back to the Jazz, but we don't know yet. I think it's going to be a bigger contract than you probably think. Were you saying 2 years, 20? You're saying 20 per, right? Or
Yeah, I mean, I'm just throwing numbers. I mean, his age, his injury history. I just don't know what team would, maybe a 3 for 90, but I feel like Lowry's more, deserving of that than Conley. But I don't know, maybe not.
I don't think you get a 3 for 90. I think you're right on it. I think you're on the mark there with the 20 mil per. I think if the Jazz signed him to a 3-year, 55, 3-year 60, something like that, maybe a 2-year 50, something like that. We'll see. But I think Conley's a good fit in the Jazz. I mean, he had a rebound year. I thought his career was pretty much over once he kind of got traded, and I thought he was going to be good, and then he wasn't. So I was like, oh, his career's done. But then he rebounds and he looks a lot better, and now he looks like his former self, where it's kind of like one of the most underrated players in the league before he got that big contract, and everybody started calling him overrated, even though I don't think being overrated or underrated has anything to do with your contract, at least not like in the media world or whatever. Um, so yeah, I think he goes to the Jazz. Uh, Other free agents in this very small free agency class. I mean, we've got Alonzo Ball, who's restricted. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens to him. I know there are a lot of Knicks fans that want LaMelo or Alonzo. I don't know how you feel about that. There's other teams. I mean, the Lakers could have been a team before, not anymore. Boston could be a team. He could still go back to the Pelicans. He could be a sign and trade candidate. The, like the Knicks could come with a big offer thinking they're going to get him, and then the Pelicans just match it because they have that much contracts salary space. But I mean, how do you feel about Lonzo on the Knicks?
I think it would be a really good fit. Do I think it's going to happen? I don't think so, but I wish it would, because I think that he's a way improved player than he's been obviously in years past. 3-point percentage is there. Then that's what the stats say. It for sure is there, and even just watching games, it's a way better shooter. The passing is going to be there. The defense obviously is going to be there, which works with a Knicks team like this. So I think he'd be a perfect fit for them. But it seems like the rumblings and the conversations have kind of gone towards the Bulls, and that was that was a trade deadline team last season that wanted to trade for him. It didn't work out. Oh, actually, I got a notification that Kawhi declined his player option for this season, so that he's going to be a free agent. It seems like they said the expectation is that he's going to negotiate with the Clippers, so it seems like he's going to stay there. But I just got that, so I thought I should say it. But I guess any thoughts on that? Do you think he's going to stay? It seems like he is, but do you think?
Yeah, I would be shocked if the Clippers didn't want to give him whatever the most they can give him is. I would assume it's the super max. I don't even really know honestly what the most they could give him is, but I would be surprised if Clippers weren't willing to give him max years, max money, no trade clause, player option, all of it. Especially because you just don't have leverage. I mean, if he leaves, you have nothing. You're just a middling team. You're in, honestly, in my opinion, the worst possible spot in basketball, which is a middling 8 seed that doesn't get in the lottery, but also isn't good, and you have no future. So it's not even worth tanking. So it's like, to me, that's a horrible spot to be in. So you throw everything at Kawhi and hope it all works out. And I would assume he would take that. I think he wants to be back in LA, and I know he's had problems with maybe the Clippers, medical staff. But which medical staff has he not had problems with? I mean, he's a mysterious person in terms of basketball superstars. It's not a negative or a positive necessarily, but I think he wants to be back in LA. It wouldn't shock me if he just randomly went to the Mavericks or to whatever team, because the reality is we don't know a lot about him, similar to how we didn't know a lot about KD. And we all thought KD was going back to the Thunder that one year when he went to Golden State. But I mean, that looking at that and now looking at this, it wouldn't shock me if he went somewhere else, but it would still really surprise me. I think he's back in LA for the max, whatever whether it's the super max or the super max or whatever. That's my answer.
Yeah, I think I would agree. I mean, again, he's going to miss all next season. I mean, maybe he can return for the playoffs, like maybe, but I doubt that honestly. But yeah, I think he'll get. Yeah, again, I don't exactly know exactly what the contract would look like, but it would obviously be $200+ million for 4 or 5 years, whatever it would be. So unless he wanted like a smaller one that maybe had options with it, but I would assume that's what he would take. So yeah, I agree. I think that for sure he's going to stay with the Clippers. Be very surprised if he didn't. But again, he's a guy that you don't know anything about. We think we know who he is, but we just don't. I mean, he didn't even tell them that he tore his ACL. For a month. I mean, he could have had that surgery, as soon as it happened, but he waited a month for it to even, to have the surgery. So we don't even know what this guy is really about. So I guess there's a chance he could just, pick up and leave and go to the Knicks or go to the Mavs or whatever team. But I would agree. I think he would probably stay with the Clippers. But um, yeah, I think it's going back to Lonzo, I guess, just quickly, with that, thing happening. Um, like I said, I think he would go to the Bulls. That's what it looks like. I think that's a really good fit for them. Again, a team that made
I
a
mean,
move last year.
would you be happy though if he went to the Knicks? Let's assume he goes to the Knicks on a deal that is his market value. Would you be happy with that, or?
Yeah, I would definitely be happy with that because I think he's just a perfect player for that team. Again, he's still young. He's been in the league for 4 years. He's still 23, maybe 24. I think he's
He's
23.
23.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, so a ton of time left. I think he can improve. Playing with the Pelicans team with Zion and Ingram, it's kind of hard to have your own shots and do stuff that you want to do offensively. On a Knicks team that has Randall, but is a team that is very willing to pass and move the ball, I think that he's just going to have more of an opportunity to score. Will I ever think he's going to get 20 points per game? No, but 16, 17 points per game, I think that's definitely in his capability. And again, passing the ball, he's going to handle the ball a lot more than he did in New Orleans. The defense, again, that's what the Knicks love. So I would be very happy with that. And I wish it would happen. It just seems like it's not going to happen. But again, that's just a rumor, a report about him and the Bulls. If the Knicks meet with him and they throw him a contract, it's a real chance. Again, to play in New York, Chicago, they're both big markets, but the Knicks are, I would say, looking better than the Bulls right now. Again, like I said, the Bulls made a move last year, it just didn't work out. But I think I kind of like the Knicks' future better, anyways. So I would be very happy with that. Now, to counter that, would you be happy if the Celtics signed them?
Yes and no. I think it's an okay fit, but I just don't think he's that guy. He has, to me, even though he was a second pick and he's only 23, going to be 24 in like 2 months. I don't love his ceiling, and I think he can make players around him better, and he can play make extremely well, and he can defend, and he's going to probably be a 38 to 42% 3-point shooter for the rest of his career. Am I going to pay him potentially, I don't know, 20 something million over the next, 3 years or whatever? I don't know. I don't really want to. Um, Now, what else would we do with that money? I mean, we have Josh Richardson for a year. I'm not exactly sure on the very, very specifics of our cap, but I mean, I know Bradley Beal's still he's still an option. I think if Ball does prevent me from being able to get Beal a year from now, then I don't want Ball. If they think Beal's just not in the cards no matter what, then I'd have rather have Ball than nothing. But I want a star. I mean, I want a big three of Brown, Tatum, and Beal slash whatever. Lonzo to me is, he's similar to Buddy Hield in that, he might be a better fit than somebody like, a star like a Beal on the Celtics team, but he's not turning your team from, a 4 seed losing to the Nets in 5 into, a 1 seed beating the Nets in 7. That's not so. Beal could do that. I mean, the Nets are a big team, but the Celtics with Beal would be a lot better than the Celtics with Lonzo.
Yeah, and looking at a contract of what Lonzo would potentially get, it seems like it'd be 4 years for potentially 70 to 80 million, which is about 20 million per year. So, that's what you would be paying, 20, I guess 20 to 25 million, I guess, looking at, whether it's 70 or 80. But, other guys who have gotten that, like a Fred VanVleet, a Malcolm Brogdon, Jonathan Murray was 4 for 64. So that's where he'd be kind of classified around that. So are you really willing to pay that much for a guy that, like you said, he's a good player? I think he's a really good player, but he's not going to give you offensively what you would love. A guy who can create his own shot and can score at a high clip. That's not who he is. He's going to be a perfect, point guard for a team that already has 2-star players. And first, I think it would work for a Celtics team, but I think this particular Celtics team does need that third guy. And he wouldn't classify as a third guy. I think he classifies like a 5th guy, which there's no problem with that. But I do agree that the Celtics probably need a Bradley Beal or someone that you can put in, you're going to get 25 points from and is a star in the league. And that's just not what Lonzo is.
My one counter to my own argument would be if you think you can sign Lonzo and he can look very well for the first half year or maybe the first year, and then you can trade him for, whatever, really anything, I guess, at that point. I mean, then maybe you just do it because, just for the net gain of, draft picks or whatever it happens to be, maybe you would do that. And then you could trade Lonzo at the deadline for something, or you could trade Lonzo in the offseason for something and then sign Beal in free agency on top of that. But that's also risky because he could also not play very well and then you can't trade him, or you just don't find the right package or anything like that, and it just doesn't work out. And then maybe Beal wants to come to Boston and you're like, oh, we wish we could sign you, but we literally don't have the money and there's nothing we can do about it because we decided to get cheeky and try to sign, Lonzo to a 4-year 80 mil. And then he ends up being just as bad as Kemba was. And then we can't trade him unless we give up like, a draft pick. And, so it's just like, it's risky. If you made me make the pick right now with not knowing anything about Beal's potential or Star's potential in Boston, and you said 4 years, we'll say 90 million, I think I'd pull the trigger on it. I think I would. And it's
90
only,
million?
yeah, sure. I mean, 80 to 90, 75 to 90 mil, whatever. I would pull the trigger on it because, I mean, maybe, I don't know. I think it might be worth it because I think Lonzo Ball would do well in Boston. I think he'd be able to pass to shooters extremely well. I think he'd be able to fit in the scheme. He's not a guy that can't fit in he should be able to fit in really any scheme pretty much. So I think he could play well. He's only 23, going to be 24. So like, I don't have to be worried about or teams don't have to be worried about him falling off. He should theoretically only get better for the next 4 to 5 years. So if he can play relatively well in Boston for half a year and then you can trade him for, I don't know, maybe a first or maybe more, or maybe another player, then I think that's worth it. Ultimately, honestly, though, thinking about it, what do I think will happen with Lonzo? I actually think that he might stay on the Pelicans.
I think I would disagree. I don't think he does. I think if anything, he gets it's a sign and trade. If anything, like that's the only way he technically signed with the Pelicans. But I think he's gone. I really do. I just don't think there's a fit for him. And I know they have a new coach and everything, but I just don't think he fits with that team anymore. So I think I would disagree with that.
I don't know that he fits either, but they have so much cap room, and I mean, are they going to go try to get a Lowry? Are they going to go try to get a DeRozan? Are they going to go try to get, I don't know, a Conley? I don't think so. I think you'd rather just keep Lonzo at that point. Then you have the upside with him as well that you wouldn't have with a
Well,
Conley, Lowry.
they do have Kira Lewis, who they drafted last year. So I think they're probably expecting him to be that point guard. You know, I think I would assume so. Again, that's why you drafted him last year. And I did like that pick last year. I think he is going to be a good player, but and again, a lot cheaper than Alonzo is going to be at 20 mil per year. So I guess that's the counter. But again, another tweet I just saw: Chris Paul. He has until midnight. Today, say Sunday, to decline his $44 million player option. It seems like he's going to decline it, but again, he's going to renegotiate. It seems like there's optimism that he's going to re-sign with the Suns. So even though him and Leonard decline their player options, it does seem like both of them are staying. So I think that's kind of what we expected, and I think that's what the Lakers expected, and that's why they traded for Westbrook.
I mean, for my own excitement and entertainment and stuff for the sport, I actually think I'd kind of like to see Paul on a different team.
I guess what team would that be?
I don't know. I mean, the Lakers would have been a team had they not traded for Westbrook and Paul was willing to sign for like the minimum, not the minimum. I get like 15 million, but that probably was super unrealistic. I don't even know what team it would be, but just to shake it up because I don't know. I mean, is this Suns team going to be? Are they going to be? I don't know. Are they going to be beating the Lakers? Are they going to be beating the Nets? Are they going to be beating the Bucks? If last year wasn't their year, I don't think there's a single alternate universe in which this year would be their year. So that's my only
Yeah,
thing. And I think it'd be a fun team to watch still because it was a fun team to watch. But I mean, I don't know. I don't think they're going to do it if they didn't do it last year. So,
yeah,
and if it's on
yeah.
a 3-year 90 mil or 3-year 120 mil, like that, I hate that move for the Suns. I do. I wouldn't want to give him more than 2 years.
I think it's rather going to be 3 for 120 or like 2 in a player or I don't know if it would be a player option or probably a club option to be honest, but I think that's probably what it would be, and it'd be for probably 30 million. I would say 35 per year. That's again I don't exactly know what the max if you'd even get the total max if you'd maybe want a little bit less or like an option or something. So we'll see, but again it seems like he's going to stay with the Suns, and that's most likely the reason that they did the Westbrook trade. So I think that's probably it for free agency. Again, it does start, tomorrow, and when guys get signed or trades happen, we'll obviously talk about it. But again, that's the biggest free agent is Kyle Lowry, so not the best free agent class, but I think there's going to be some impactful moves if they do happen. Again, if he goes to a Heat, there was conversations about DeRozan possibly going to the Heat as well. Him to the Lakers, Melo to the Lakers. I mean, that's not huge, but it's something. Alonzo Ball, something. So I guess we'll see what happens, but I think that's probably it for this episode. For the NBA episode, we're about to do an MLB episode, which will be right after. But I guess, do you have anything else?
No, that's pretty much it. Appreciate everybody who stayed to the end. Feel free to check everything out in the description, social medias, all that. We'll be back the day after you see this, the day after it uploads. We'll be back with MLB, lots of stuff. So stay tuned. Goodbye.